So we've got ourselves the first vehicle on Mazda's large vehicle platform. This is the Mazda CX-60, and you might go, another Mazda SUV, why would I bother? I was excited about this car. If I admitted to my friends I was excited about a Mazda SUV, I think I would be disowned by everyone. But this is something worth getting excited about because here on the side it says inline six. Yes, you haven't heard of an inline six from Mazda, and that's probably the most exciting motor you've heard since the rotary. We know this, like the rotary peak Mazda. Now we've got inline sixes here in 2023 in a family SUV. So there's 3 models to choose from in the new CX-60 range, but here's the really cool thing, and I thought that was actually pretty special, is that you can go ahead and choose any engine you want with any model of the CX-60. So that means if you want the plug-in hybrid, but you don't want any fancy features, you can do it. You can do that. They'll let you do that. It's crazy because usually brands will make you spend the most amount of money on the most expensive engine option, and then they'll also be like, you have to buy the most expensive model grade to get that motor. But here, Mazda said, choose whatever model you want and then choose whatever engine you want. So that's pretty cool and how flexible it is. Now, the range starts off at just under $60,000. So it's $59,800 for the base 3.3 litre inline six petrol in the Evolve model. Now, you're looking at possibly the sexiest CX-60 you can buy, which is going to be your top Azami model. So this one's topping out at, with the plug-in hybrid model, that's going to top out at $85,500 before on roads. That's going to be with the plug-in hybrid motor. It's your top spec, everything you could wish for in a CX-60. But this one here, because it has the petrol motor, is going to set you back $73,000 before on-road costs. So look, it's sort of undercutting a few different cars in this segment that would have a similar size engine and luxury features that this has. You've got really nice LED lights here, which just look fantastic. And they've got a really interesting signature as well, because they sort of cut in here to the black grille. Now this black grille here is part of the SP pack. This is an upgrade, so it's getting these blacked out accents similar that you'll see on the GT model, gets a bunch of black accents, and then you're seeing that here as well. Now we are getting some functional air vents down on the side, but if you look at this from the side, it looks a lot different from a regular Mazda SUV. Not too different, but there are some things here that sort of give away that this is a bit more of a performer compared to something like a CX-5. So you've got a large bonnet to hide your inline six motor, but it's no secret it's an inline six motor because it says inline six right here, which I really quite like. You're getting black 20-inch wheels wrapped in Bridgestone rubber. You're getting body-colored cladding along the side skirts and around the wheel arches. You're getting gloss black mirror caps as well on this SP pack. Now, Shibata-san, who was responsible for the entire development of the CX-60 over in Japan, said he wanted to create an athletic shape. He wanted you to look at this thing and go, yep, that's a fast car. Like you would if you saw an athlete. You go, that's a fast runner. And I say he's done a pretty good job. This is a rear-wheel drive bias car, so a lot of the mass here is towards the rear to sort of suggest that this is where all your power is going, and that long bonnet is obviously there to show off the fact that there is a large motor underneath there. Now we're getting LED lights here at the rear. You do get a rear wiper, of course, but then what I liked about the design here at the rear 3/4 is that it reminded me of some pretty sporty European cars when you looked at this from the rear 3/4 when it was out on the road. So that's a good compliment as well. Now down here going, oh my gosh, a Mazda, it has quad tips, and yeah, it does have quad tips, but they are very fake, unfortunately. But let's take a listen to what that inline six sounds on the outside. Of course, get an automatic tailgate here, which is very useful. And here in the back, you do have over 400 litres of boot space, which is very cavernous. It's a nice flat load floor as well, which I was very surprised by of how well packaged this boot is. And they've carved out a little space here, as you can see, for my camera gear, which is very useful because it has a little net for any loose items in the back. Now, under here in the boot floor, we do have a spare tyre for anyone who was wondering, which is, of course, very useful for long road trips. And in the back, you do have a 12-volt socket if you need to charge anything. This, being a large SUV, has a 40-20-40 split, which is such a breath of fresh air, which means you can fold down that middle seat independent of the big seats on the outside. It means you can make a little bit more room for things like skis, snowboards, or anything a bit longer, which is just awesome. And I love to see that in this car. So the doors in the back open to nearly 90 degrees, which is very useful to get in and out. So any large adults, or if you're carrying any baby seats, will be able to slide in with no problems. These outer rear seats on this higher spec Azami model are actually heated, which is quite good. We have 2 USB-C ports, and we even have an AC port, which is like a household plug. So I was able to use my fast phone charger there to get a really quick fast charge, which is something that you just never get when you're in a car. You always have those slow USBs, but here in the back we have an AC port, so you can charge anything you need that has a household plug, which is quite useful. But thanks to that lowered center exhaust and transmission tunnel, it's actually not too bad to sort of put your feet up there if you're sharing space with people in the rear. Now we have plenty of soft materials around your knees as well, and this giant center console, and there's this wood look trim running around here as well, which, you know, I wish it was real wood, but at least it's nicer to look at than gloss black plastic. We really don't like that. Now your climate controls have some pretty cool buttons as well. We have a wireless charging pad, a 12-volt socket, and we even have some cup holders, but they're not too large, so they're probably going to only be good for some coffee cups. Bad, but you do get a pretty generous little glove box here with plenty of felt lining in there as well, which I really quite like. Now these seats on this SP pack are insane. They look great, love the stitching, and you of course get this suede up here on the dash if you option that $2,000 option pack for this top spec Azami model. And of course this two-tone wheel just looks fantastic, and I do like the bit of chrome there as well. There's two 12-inch displays in here, which is something you get on the higher grades in the CX-60, and they look great, they're crisp, and I really like the driver's display, but unfortunately it's not too customizable. I would have liked to maybe have seen a bit more customization options if you have a big screen like this, but Mazda sort of doesn't really want you to do that. Now you get a pretty large heads-up display as well, but yeah, if you're wearing polarized sunglasses, I learned that, yeah, you can't really see it if you're wearing that. But when you aren't, it's actually very useful, and it's a nice large display, and it'll give you plenty of information as well. Now, the coolest party trick this car has is facial recognition. So if you jump into this car for the first time and you want to set up a profile, it will ask you for your height. So in this Azami model, it will ask you to put your height in centimeters. It's only going to come on this highest grade. And what you're going to do is you're going to go, okay, I'm 180 centimeters tall, punch it in, and it will adjust your seat, your mirrors, and your electronically adjustable steering column to make sure that you're in the most comfortable position that it thinks you can be in with this car. But then you can obviously fine tune it, and then you can register your face using facial recognition in this car. So you sort of look left and right, and then when you jump out of the car, jump back in, it will register your face, and it will go, hey Cameron, welcome back, and just immediately set up the car to how you like it, which I think's pretty cool. You're getting 450 Newton meters of torque, and this thing can go 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in around 6.9 seconds, which is pretty quick for a larger SUV. Now this engine set up in a longitudinal placement with a rear-wheel drive bias, and even has a thing called a kinematic posture control system, which is designed to keep this car nice and flat and planted, and that is exactly what I've experienced in this car. Now Shibata-san, who is actually the program manager for the CX-60, he oversaw the entire development from start to finish of this car. He's been here, I interviewed him along with a bunch of other Mazda high-ups, and he was saying that this car is designed to invoke driving fun. It's meant to be something that you enjoy looking forward to driving, and I can tell you that the inline six gets me excited. When I want to jump into a CX-60, I want to know that I've got the inline six under my right foot, and I can just sort of plant my foot and just roll onto the power. It's got a turbocharger. This thing is the perfect stablemate if you enjoy driving like an MX-5 on the weekend and you want something that's also good to look at and also fun to drive, then you can jump into a CX-60. Now the brake feel in this car is a bit interesting. It doesn't feel super connected because it is brake by wire, but that's not a bad thing in a car like this. You want it to sort of coast and bring the car down without pitching forwards too much. And that's what other Mazda models will sort of do, but then the CX-60 intentionally went ahead and made sure that the car sort of floats down. It doesn't pitch forward, it sort of floats down and then rises back up to avoid sort of any car sickness, and also just make sure that it's a very smooth ride. Now my parents drive an Alfa Romeo Stelvio, which is something that came to mind immediately when I heard that Mazda was releasing a rear-wheel drive bias and longitudinal setup SUV. That is a brilliant handling SUV, and it is a bit darty. It is a bit more playful for sure, and the gearbox is obviously a bit snappier with those super large metal paddles. But this is a different beast. They've gone ahead and taken those same things that makes a longitudinal engine setup and rear-wheel drive bias a lot of fun, but then they've gone ahead and made this thing feel more planted. It feels more secure, and it feels more confidence-inducing the faster you head through corners. Now there's other things here as well, that they made sure that the engine sound was something that was harmonic and sounded, you know, pleasant. It didn't have much intrusion. And this car has plenty of sound editing as well to make sure that there's no sort of shot noises coming through the cabin. And so it's a very cleverly engineered car, and it just goes beyond the fact that this has a 3.3 litre inline six petrol turbo motor. Now you might think that the fuel consumption in an engine like this is sky high, but funnily enough, this has a mild hybrid system. Now that mild hybrid system fills in the gaps on the low end where a petrol motor or diesel motor might not be super efficient, and it actually works really well. And it's very, very clever because when you pull up to a stop, it actually doesn't shudder off the engine when you do your start stop. It's very interesting. It just sort of like coasts down, the revs drop, and then you'll hear the engine kick back on as you proceed. Now, this car is returning around 11.3 litres per 100 Ks, which is actually decent for a larger displacement inline six. The handling in this car is pretty important because this is a rear-wheel drive bias car. It's got all-wheel drive, but it means it will push power to the rear when it needs to, and obviously it's going to provide power to the rear as a preference. So it means you're going to go through corners and you're going to get a nice amount of confidence going through there, rather than sort of feeling like you're getting a bit of understeer, which you might experience in a front-wheel drive SUV. Around town, I did find it does bump a little bit more than it would around maybe some other SUVs that are more luxury focused. So this was sort of picking up a few more bumps. It was sort of hitting speed bumps a bit more than I would have expected from a bigger luxury SUV like this. So look, if you want to spend the most amount of money on a CX-60 in any model, you're going to have to go and get the plug-in hybrid. But in return for your money, you're going to get the most powerful CX-60 you can buy. This pushes out over 300 horsepower, which is over 240 kilowatts, and it puts out 500 newton meters of torque when you combine a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder and an electric battery and motor. So first of all, EV mode. Look how silently this thing starts. There's some whirring in the background you can hear. Then once you get going, it sort of jostles around and it gets going and it sort of moves. And this thing will go up to 100 kilometers an hour on just pure electric mode, which is pretty cool. Now, it will go up to around 76 kilometers of usable range as well, according to Mazda, which is around 5 times more than the average Australian commute. So Mazda reckons this will be plenty of electric power if you just wanted to ride around electric power all day and then charge at night if you're just commuting. Now, as we drive around, the electric mode is very silent and it's all very pleasant. Drives like an electric car, of course. So I do like the feeling of an electric Mazda CX-60, but we're not here just to drive an electric CX-60 because we do pay for a petrol motor. So I do want to see what a petrol motor does. So we go into sport mode here, and if you put your foot down, there goes everything. You can go ahead and get a bit of pace out of this thing. Now, you will hear that 4-cylinder working a bit hard, and that's something I'm not really a big fan of. I love the buttery smoothness of the 6-cylinder options you can get in this car. And then the 4-cylinder, it's just a bit raspy when you sort of hammer down on it, but it will help deliver that extra power. So this thing will move when you want it to. So it does have some pace, this thing. This will make sure that you do get to the school concert or, you know, the school drop off, or even make sure you get to the appointment on time. This is a very fun to drive SUV from Mazda. It's awesome. Now, the steering feels a bit heavy. That's not too bad, but it's just something to note. It is on the heavy side. And the other thing as well, this uses the same size brakes as the normal petrol CX-60. So that's something to note because the brake feel is a bit, it just feels like there's a bit of dough under there, which, you know, like this is carrying around a bit more weight thanks to those electric motors and also the battery, so it's going to feel a bit heavier. As for the gearbox, you can change through these gears, and what's interesting, it does like a shove down occasionally, which can be a bit jarring if you've never experienced that, but yeah, it does sort of shove down a bit occasionally. But this thing doesn't have a traditional 8-speed automatic gearbox. It doesn't have a torque converter. That's what the plug-in hybrid system is there for. It's designed to go ahead and be your torque converter, which is very interesting that they've gone ahead and done that. They've actually removed the torque converter out of a torque converter automatic altogether. Now, while the plug-in hybrid is the fastest and most powerful engine option you can get, and a great engine option for people who want plenty of range but don't want a diesel motor and they want to save a bit on their fuel bill, it's a cool option. But I think I might like the flavors of the inline 6 engines a bit more. Now, since these are available pretty much right now to order and they're out now, you're probably wondering which engine should I get? Well, I think the petrol's a really good place to start, and then you can work your way towards the plug-in hybrid, seeing as that is the most expensive. If you know you want a plug-in hybrid, it's there, but if you know you want a diesel, that's an option too. But personally, I probably go for the petrol engine with this mild hybrid setup. And which model would I pick? I'd probably start with the GT, but of course, if you want the ultimate expression of this car, you want that Azami model with this SP pack, because this thing just looks awesome.